My son sold the grave beside my wife while I was still alive. Then I saw my name carved on a headstone dated next Friday. I found out my son had sold my grave on a Thursday afternoon, right between buying cough drops and forgetting why I had walked into the pharmacy. The cemetery called it a transfer of ownership. My son called it planning ahead. I called it eviction from the afterlife. I was 74 years old, which meant two things were true. My knees had started predicting rain better than the local news, and people had begun explaining my own life to me slowly, as if volume and disrespect were medical tools. They were wrong about the second part. My name is Walter Harlan. For almost 40 years, I carved names into stone. Granite, marble, limestone, cheap composite markers for people whose families had more grief than money. I knew how deep to cut a letter so rain would not soften it. I knew which families would argue over font size while the widow was still shaking. I knew sons who sobbed over caskets and then asked if the funeral home took cashback credit cards. Dead people rarely gave me trouble. Families did. Every Thursday, I visited my wife Marion at Willow Creek Cemetery. I brought a rag, a little brush, and a thermos of coffee I never finished. Marion had been gone 5 years, but I still wiped dust from her name, like she might scold me if I let it sit too long. She chose that plot herself, 2 spaces under the old sycamore tree, side by side, hers on the left, mine on the right. She said, if I was going to spend eternity complaining about my knees, I might as well do it somewhere with shade. That was Marion. Romantic as a knife. That Thursday, the first thing I noticed was the red stake in the ground. Then the strip of plastic tape. Then the white sticker pasted across the lower corner of Marion's marker. Removal pending. The tape covered the last 3 letters of her name. I peeled it back with my thumbnail before I understood anything else. That was the strange part. Before fear, before anger, before I knew my son had signed my grave away, I was offended by plastic touching her letters. A young man in a yellow vest was measuring the edge of the plot with a metal wheel. I said, "You boys lost?" He looked up, polite and bored. "No, sir. This section was transferred last week." "Transferred?" "Yes, sir. This plot belongs to me." He checked his tablet. "Are you Walter Harlan?" "I was when I woke up." He did not smile. "Young people miss half the gifts you hand them." The boy tapped the screen again. "It says here the authorized family representative approved transfer and relocation." "Who?" he swallowed. "Russell Harlan, my son." The coffee in my hand had gone cold, but I kept holding it, because setting it down would mean my hands were free to do something stupid. Russell was my only child, 48 years old, owner of Harlan Custom Builds, a construction company that had been almost turning around for 15 years. I had bailed him out 3 times. Marion begged me not to the 3rd time. She said, "Walter, a man can drown in help." I told her he was our son. She said, "That's what makes it dangerous." The young worker shifted his weight. "Sir, you may want to speak with the cemetery office." "I intend to." I started walking, then stopped. Behind the maintenance shed, half covered by a blue tarp, sat a new headstone. Something about it bothered me. A man who carves stone notices covered stone, the way a butcher notices a wrapped knife. I walked over and pulled the tarp back. There it was, Marion's name on the left, mine on the right. Walter Elias Har, land 1949, Friday, October 18. For a moment, I forgot how to swallow. Friday, October 18. Next Friday, my fingers went to the carved letters. Dust was still in the grooves, fresh cut, machine finished, not hand carved. The spacing around the dash was wrong. The date was shallow, the kind of shallow cut companies use when they expect to replace stone quickly and hope nobody loved the person enough to notice. I had seen my name on bills, tax forms, and one insulting birthday cake where Russell had written "still alive" somehow. Seeing it on stone was less festive. The office manager came out when she saw me standing there. Her name was Beth, and she had known me long enough to look scared before she said hello. "Walter," she said, "I was going to call you. People always say that after they don't." She folded her hands. Russell brought paperwork. It looked valid. "We were told you were aware." "I'm standing in front of my own headstone, Beth. Awareness is improving by the second." She winced. I pointed at the date. Who ordered that? Her face went pale. The request came through Mercer Memorial Group. Mercer. That name did more than bother me. It opened a door I had spent 35 years leaning furniture against. I called Russell from the cemetery parking lot. He answered on the fourth ring. Dad, did you sell my grave? Silence, then a sigh. Not guilt, irritation. That hurt more. Dad, don't make this dramatic. I looked through the windshield at the sycamore tree over Marion's plot. It's hard not to be dramatic when I find my name carved in stone with a date I haven't reached yet. Another silence. It was just planning ahead, he said. Planning ahead is buying soup before a snowstorm. This is scheduling me, he lowered his voice. We'll come by tonight. We can talk like adults. I almost laughed. I had noticed people only requested adult conversations after they had behaved like children with access to legal forms. That evening, Russell came to my house with his wife, Celeste, and my granddaughter, June. June was 16. Quiet, in the way children become quiet when adults have been using the house as a courtroom. She wore her school hoodie and kept tugging one sleeve over her hand. Celeste came in behind Russell. Perfect coat, perfect hair, eyes sharp enough to open envelopes. Celeste had never liked me. She was too polite to say it, which made it worse. Rude people are honest enough to give you handles. Polite people make you grab smoke. We sat in the kitchen, Marion's kitchen. Her blue curtains were still there, faded at the edges. I had meant to replace them. Then 5 years passed. Grief has terrible time management. Russell began carefully. Dad, the cemetery fees have gone up. Maintenance, relocation options, long-term planning. You sold your mother's grave. I transferred the plot. You transferred your mother's grave. It isn't like that. It has dirt, a marker, and your mother's name on it. Help me understand what part is confusing you. Celeste leaned forward. Walter, grief makes people attach meaning to things that are really just assets. June looked down at the table. I watched my daughter-in-law. Assets. She nodded, almost gently. Grief is just property people are too sentimental to sell. The room went quiet. I reached for the salt shaker because my hand needed something to do. I knocked it over. Salt spilled across the table in a little white fan. June reached for a napkin and cleaned it up without a word. That small kindness almost undid me. Russell cleared his throat. Mom would understand. She always wanted us to be practical. There it was. My son used his dead mother like a permission slip. I saw Marion in that moment, standing barefoot in the kitchen, hair tied up, laughing at me because I had burned bacon again. I saw her in the chemo chair, trying to smile while her hand disappeared inside mine. I saw her pointing at the sycamore tree at Willow Creek and saying, There. I like that shade. She picked that plot, I said. Russell looked away. Celeste did not. It's not healthy, she said, to build your remaining life around a cemetery. I spent 40 years around cemeteries, I said. They were rarely the problem. June shifted in her chair. Something slipped from Celeste's purse. A ring. It rolled once on the tile and stopped near my shoe. June picked it up first. Her face changed. Mom, she whispered, why do you have Grandma's ring? Russell froze. Celeste's mouth tightened. It was going to be appraised. The ring sat in June's palm. Marion's wedding ring, not the one buried with her. That one was a simple band we bought later, because Marion wanted the real one kept safe. The real ring had stayed in a small wooden box in my bedroom drawer, wrapped in the handkerchief she carried on our wedding day. No one knew that except me and Russell. I looked at my son. Did you open your mother's box? He did not answer. Celeste smiled at June. You're old enough to learn that love doesn't make objects sacred. June flinched. That was the moment I stopped looking at Celeste as only greedy. Greed grabs. Cruelty teaches. Celeste was teaching my granddaughter how to stop feeling. I turned to Russell. Did you hear your wife? His jaw moved. No words came out. Celeste answered for him. At some point, someone has to handle what you refuse to. I looked at Russell. He stared at the spilled salt June had missed near the edge of the table. That was when I understood the shape of it. He did not know everything, but he knew enough. After they left, I sat in the kitchen with Marion's ring on the table in front of me. I did not sleep. Old men say they sleep lightly. Mostly we just lie still and let our memories make noise. Mercer Memorial Group. That name had been Mercer and Sons Funeral Home when I was young. I worked there from the time I was 22 until I was almost 60. I carved stones, repaired markers, drove the hearse when somebody called in sick, and helped in the preparation room when the real embalmers were short-handed. The preparation room had yellow tile and a drain in the floor. You never forget a room with a drain in the floor. In 1988, a woman named Clara Bellamy came through Mercer. At least, that was her real name. The file said Clara Bennett. I knew it was wrong. I knew because the toe tag said Bellamy when the body arrived. I saw it before Mr. Mercer replaced it. She had bruises on one wrist and a small cut near her hairline. There was rainwater on the hem of her dress. A red thread was tied around her left wrist, the kind a child might make for a mother. I asked one question. Mr. Mercer told me not to develop a personality at work. Then he gave me an envelope with cash in it and a sketch for the headstone. Clara Bennett, I carved the wrong name. I told myself a name on stone was just a name. The first line cut clean. The B did not. My chisel slipped and chipped the edge. Mr. Mercer slapped the back of my head hard enough to make my ear ring. Cut cleaner, he said. The dead don't complain. I used that money for Marion's hospital bills after Russell was born. That was how I justified it. Men can justify almost anything if they call it feeding a family. 3 days later, Clara Bellamy disappeared from every record I could find. A baby girl disappeared with her. Years later, a lawyer named Ruth Bellamy wrote to me asking if I remembered her mother. I did not answer. I kept her letter in the drawer under the unpaid water bill for 9 years. Every spring, I told myself I would answer it after taxes. Every winter, I moved it to the back again. The next afternoon, June came over after school. She said she wanted to check on me. Teenagers say things like that when they are terrified and do not want you to notice. She stood in the kitchen, still wearing her backpack. I heard them talking, she said. Your parents? She nodded. Mom, said Mercer's. Twice, she said October 18th. Dad told her to stop saying dates in the house. I pulled out a chair. She sat, not like a child, like someone who had been carrying something too heavy and had finally found a table. I took a picture of the headstone, she said, the one with your name. You went to the cemetery? I made Dad take me. He said I was being dramatic. Then he stayed in the car. She looked down. I sent him the picture. I went still. What did he say? June opened her phone and turned the screen toward me. Russell's reply was short. Don't show Grandpa yet. Not what is this? Not who did that. Not, are you okay? Don't show Grandpa yet. It is a terrible thing when 4 words can finish raising your child for you. June rubbed her sleeve between her fingers. I think Mom has papers, she said. Once you're declared medically unstable, the cemetery transfer won't matter. I said nothing. June's face tightened. Maybe everyone in this family lies. That one got through. She saw it. She did not apologize, not with words. She just pushed my coffee closer before it went cold. That was Marion in her, not the words, the repair. Grandpa, she said after a while, why would Dad sell the place where Grandma was waiting for you? I had no answer. So I stood, opened the drawer by the sink, and took out the little brush I used to clean Marion's stone. I rinsed it under the faucet, even though it was not dirty. June watched me. Neither of us pretended that made sense. The next morning, I got a call from Mercer Memorial Group. A woman with a voice like carpeted stairs said, Mr. Harlan, we're calling to confirm your pre-need final arrangement consultation. I looked at the phone. My what? Your final arrangement consultation. It was scheduled through your family representative. That's ambitious. I usually attend my appointments alive. A pause. Sir, does your calendar have a slot for people not dead yet? Another pause. We understand these conversations can feel sensitive. My dear, you are calling a man whose death date is carved for next Friday. Sensitive left the building and took its purse. She said the consultation involved burial relocation, medical incapacity planning, and end-of-life document review. There it was, not one paper, a net. That afternoon, Russell came by pretending he wanted to drive me to a doctor. For a simple evaluation, he said. just to calm everyone down. Everyone being Celeste. Dad. What kind of doctor? A memory specialist. I looked at the appointment card. The clinic name meant nothing. The address did. It was in the same medical building as a Mercer consultant. I still went. Not because I trusted Russell. Because sometimes the fastest way to see a trap is to let the fool show you where he set it. The doctor was younger than my socks. He asked me the date. I told him. He asked me who the president was. I told him. He asked me to remember 3 words. Apple. Table. Penny. I said. Son, I spent 40 years remembering names of people who could no longer correct me. I can hold your fruit salad for 5 minutes. He did not laugh. Doctors are not required to have souls, but it helps. Then he asked why I was resisting family-supported transition planning. That phrase had Mercer fingerprints all over it. I looked at Russell. He looked at the carpet. The doctor later wrote I displayed hostility, suspicion, and possible fixation regarding burial property. Possible fixation. A man finds his death date on stone and becomes fixated. Medical science is a marvel. 2 days later, Mercer sent a man to my house. He arrived in a black sedan, wore a camel coat, and had hands that looked like they had never lifted anything heavier than a signature. His name was Graham Pike. Mr. Harlan, he said, smiling from my porch, I'm here to discuss a peaceful path forward. Peaceful. Another word thieves like. I opened the screen door halfway. You selling religion or stealing graves? His smile moved half an inch and returned to its original position. I represent Mercer Memorial Group. We are modernizing several older sections of Willow Creek. Modernizing the dead. That's ambitious. He glanced past me into the house. This does not need to become adversarial. Son, you put my death date on stone. We passed friendly a few exits back. His smile thinned. At your age, certainty can be a comfort. I carved dates for men who thought they had certainty. Stone was usually less impressed. That got him, just a little. He handed me a card. I did not take it. It landed face up on the porch between us. I let it stay there. Petty, maybe. At 74, you take your victories in small sizes. Then he noticed the old photograph on my hallway table. Mercer and Sons Staff Picnic, 1987. Me standing near the back, Marion beside me. Mr. Mercer in the center, with his hand on my shoulder like he owned it. Graham looked at the photo. Then at me. Mr. Mercer said you might remember how to keep a name quiet. My stomach went cold. Clara Bellamy had just walked onto my porch without bones. I closed the door before I said something useless. Then I opened the drawer where Ruth Bellamy's old letter had sat for 9 years. I called the number. A woman answered. This is Ruth Bellamy. My name is Walter Harlan, I said. I think I'm ready to tell you where your mother was buried. She did not speak for several seconds. When she did, her voice was flat. I'll be there tomorrow. Ruth Bellamy arrived at 8 in the morning. She was in her 50s, gray at the temples, with eyes that looked like they had been waiting a long time and did not enjoy being proven right. She did not shake my hand. Good. I had not earned that. June sat at the kitchen table with us, silent. Ruth placed a folder down. I know you carved the wrong name. I nodded. I did. I know you were paid. Yes. I know my mother had bruises when she arrived at Mercer. I looked down. Yes, her jaw moved once. I did not come here for sorry. I know. I came here for useful. That was fair. So I told her about the headstone, the transfer, Mercer, Graham Pike, the death date, the ring, June's picture, the pre-need call, the doctor, the recording. Ruth listened without interrupting. Lawyers are like funeral directors in that way. The good ones know silence makes people tell on themselves. By noon, she had filed emergency objections to the cemetery transfer, contacted Adult Protective Services, and requested records from Mercer. By evening, Russell had called 11 times. I answered none of them. June answered none either. Silence from people you thought you could always reach is a very particular kind of punishment. That night, Russell came back. It was past midnight. Rain tapped the window soft and steady. I had not been sleeping. I heard a car door close outside, then saw headlights die on the street. Not in the driveway, on the street. That told me enough. I turned on the porch light. Russell froze near the side path like a raccoon caught with church silver. I opened the door. If you came to apologize, I said, you parked like a thief. His face was wet with rain. I need the cemetery papers. No, Dad, please. You are using that word very flexibly tonight. He looked toward the hallway, toward the study. I just need to understand what you're going to do. No, I said. You need to control what survives. That landed. He looked smaller in the rain. I didn't know about the date on the stone, but you knew there was a stone. I thought it was just pressure. Pressure for what? He did not answer. What did you think would happen next Friday, Russell? Rain ran from his hair into his eyes. I don't know. Yes, I said. You do. You just didn't want to say it out loud where you could hear yourself. His mouth twisted. You always do that. What? Make me feel like I'm already guilty before I explain. I almost snapped back. Then I saw him at 12 years old, crying because he had broken Marion's blue vase and tried to glue it together with school paste. I had yelled then too. Maybe too much. You forgave me like a man lowering a bill, he said. Not like a father who believed I could be better. That one got in. Some accusations arrive wearing enough truth to get through the door. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I kept paying your fines because I was too afraid to let you meet yourself. He stared at me. I stared back. Neither of us won. He left without the papers. I stood on the porch until his taillights disappeared. Then I checked the study door. Not because I hated him, because I knew him. There is a difference, though it hurts the same. The next morning, June noticed mud on the porch. I told her a raccoon came by. She looked at the footprints. Grandpa. What? That raccoon wears dress shoes. I sighed. Public schools are teaching too much. She did not laugh, but she sat closer at breakfast. That counted. The next week came apart in pieces. Ruth found the death certificate packet. It was not a filed death certificate. Not yet. It was worse in a quieter way. A pre-filled death record packet, waiting for one signature and one quiet Friday. My name, my birth date, my social security number, my burial preference, my plot number. Cause of death listed as cardiac event, pending physician, confirmation. Attached to it was a physician statement from the young doctor who had asked me to remember apple, table, penny. He wrote that I demonstrated cognitive resistance to appropriate end-of-life transition planning. I read that sentence 3 times. Then I looked at Ruth. Does that mean I refuse to die politely? Essentially. I've been accused of worse. Then she showed me Celeste's text to Russell. If he falls before Friday, everything gets easier. Nobody said murder. Nobody had to. That night, I checked the stair rail twice, then the back door, then the pill bottles in the bathroom. I felt foolish doing it. Then I remembered my name on stone and checked them again. Adult Protective Services came the next morning. 2 workers, polite, tired, clipboards. I trusted them immediately. Cheerful people in that line of work worry me. Too much cheer around misery means someone is selling something. They asked if anyone pressured me about burial rights, medical decisions, or property. Before I answered, June came downstairs with her phone. My mother, she said. Then she played the recording. Celeste's voice filled the kitchen. Once he's declared medically unstable, the cemetery transfer won't matter. We'll already have authority. Russell's voice came next. What about June? Celeste answered. Children forgive when adults control the story. The younger APS worker stopped writing. The older one kept writing harder. That report became the first official witness outside the family. Celeste had meant to bury me with bureaucracy. Instead, she invited bureaucracy into my kitchen and gave it coffee. Then Celeste struck where she knew it would hurt. She filed a statement claiming June was emotionally suggestible and distressed due to Walter's fixation on death. She included school counselor notes from 2 years earlier, after Marion died, when June had cried in class for 3 days straight. June read the copy at my table. Her face went white. She used that? I took the papers gently. Yes, I was 12. I know. I missed Grandma. I know. June did not cry. That worried me more. She just folded her sleeves over both hands and stared at the wall. Celeste had not only used her daughter to open a door. She had tried to make grief look like unreliability. That is a special kind of ugly. 2 days later, June found the silver comb. She found it in Celeste's purse when Ruth arranged for her to collect clothes from Russell's house. A small silver comb. Marion's comb. Not worth much, not to anyone sane. Marion used it when chemo took most of her hair. She still combed the little she had left because she said, "If death wants me messy, it can make an appointment." I kept that comb in the same wooden box as her ring. June brought it to me wrapped in a tissue. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I took it. For a moment, I could not speak. There are objects that weigh more than they should. That night, I washed Marion's comb in the kitchen sink. Then I regretted it halfway through. There was nothing on it, not really. No hair, no scent, just silver and memory. Still, I dried it with the corner of my shirt like I had nearly hurt her. June stood in the doorway and watched. I could tell she wanted to say something. I could also tell she had no idea what. That made two of us. So I said, "Your grandmother used to call this her fancy comb. It is fancy. It cost $12 at a drugstore in 1996. June looked at it. Maybe fancy is who used it. I had to turn away for a second. Old men do that. We pretend to check the sink. 2 days before the hearing, Ruth took me and June to the old Mercer and Sons funeral home. The building had been closed for 12 years, bought by Mercer Memorial Group, and scheduled for demolition after the cemetery redevelopment. The front windows were dusty. The sign had lost 2 letters. The place smelled like wet wood and old flowers. I had not been inside since my retirement party. I did not want to go in. June noticed. She touched my sleeve, not my hand, just the sleeve. Teenagers ration tenderness like expensive medicine. We entered through the side door. The chapel was empty. The carpet was stained where caskets used to rest. Downstairs, the preparation room still had yellowed tile and a drain in the center of the floor. My knees almost gave out when I saw it. Not from age, from memory. I saw Clara Bellamy on that table again. 20-something, wrist bruised, toe tag wrong. I saw Mr. Mercer replacing the tag. I saw my younger hands taking the money. Ruth stood beside the old prep table. This is where she was? Yes. Her face did not change. June wandered near the storage cabinets, looking at the floor, the walls, the old shelves. "Grandpa," she said, "why is that panel different?" At the base of the prep table, beneath the stone slab, was a narrow metal panel with wax around one edge. Marion had come here once after Clara's burial. She had known I lied. Of course she had. Marriage is being loved by someone who can still see exactly where you are dangerous. Ruth pried open the panel with a screwdriver from her bag. Inside was a small tin box wrapped in oilcloth. No one moved for a while. Finding a secret in a place like that feels less like discovery and more like disturbing a grave. Ruth opened it. Inside were 4 things: a metal toe tag stamped Clara Bellamy, a Polaroid of Clara's body, bruises visible, a ledger page with payment dates, property addresses, names, and a folded note in Marion's handwriting. "Walt, if they ever try to bury the truth twice." Ruth sat down in the broken chair behind her. She did not cry. Not then. She held the toe tag in both hands and kept rubbing the metal with her thumb, like she could warm it back into a name. I said, "I'm sorry." She looked at me. "I told you." Useful. But her voice broke on the last word. The court hearing was 3 weeks later. Celeste arrived in a cream suit, dressed for innocence. Russell arrived separately, dressed like a man attending his own slow funeral. June sat beside me. Before we went in, Ruth stopped me in the hallway. "This will not feel like justice," she said. I looked at the courtroom doors. What will it feel like, being opened in public? She was right. Ruth did not throw everything at the judge at once. Good lawyers do not dump evidence. They build stairs. And that morning, she built 3. The first stair was family, the cemetery transfer, Russell's signature, the fact that years ago, while Marion was sick, I had listed Russell as emergency contact for Willow Creek so the cemetery could call him if I missed something. That was not ownership. It was a phone number. Mercer had treated it like a door. Ruth showed how Russell signed as authorized family representative, how Mercer accepted that without confirming with me, and how Celeste had attached medical concern language to make the transfer look compassionate instead of criminal. Then came June's photograph of my headstone. My name, my birth year. Next Friday, Ruth showed the text June had sent Russell. Then Russell's reply. Don't show Grandpa yet. Russell was asked if he had seen the date. He looked at June, then at me, then at the judge. I didn't look closely. June's voice was small but clear. I zoomed in before I sent it. The courtroom went quiet. Then Ruth presented Marion's ring and silver comb. Celeste's attorney tried to call them items of limited market value. The judge looked over her glasses. Counsel, not every theft is measured by resale price. I almost liked her. The second stare was the pattern, the pre-need funeral call, the death certificate packet, the doctor's letter, Mercer's internal relocation schedule for October 18. 14 other families with similar authorized transfers from elderly plot owners or relatives declared incompetent. Same phrases, same doctor, same Mercer consultant, same quiet theft dressed in sympathy. Ruth showed the court that October 18 was not just the date on my stone. It was the date Mercer planned to relocate old graves from that section. I did not have to die that day. I only had to become inconvenient enough on paper for the transfer to finish without me. Then Ruth displayed Celeste's text to Russell. If he falls before Friday, everything gets easier. Nobody said murder. Nobody had to. By then, my shirt had started sticking to my back. Courtrooms are cold until your life is the thing being read aloud. The third stare was the dead. Ruth paused before presenting the tin box. For the first time that morning, she looked less like a lawyer and more like Clara Bellamy's daughter. The judge waited. Nobody rushed her. Even courtrooms know when the dead are about to speak. The toe tag, the Polaroid, the ledger, Marion's note. Then Ruth looked at me. Mr. Harlan, did you carve the wrong name on Clara Bellamy's grave? My mouth went dry. I could feel June beside me, still as stone. Yes. Did you know it was wrong? Yes. Were you paid? Yes. My voice sounded old. Not sharp, not clever, just old. I took the money. I carved the wrong name. I told myself Stone didn't care. I looked at Ruth. I was wrong. Celeste watched me with a strange expression, almost satisfaction, like she had dragged my dirt into the light. But dirt is funny that way. Once it is in the light, you can stop carrying it alone. Ruth then connected the ledger to Mercer's first property thefts, to Silas Voss, to the shell companies that became Mercer Memorial Group, and then she showed Celeste's family connection. Her mother, Elaine Rourke, had worked under Mercer during the Clara Bellamy case. Elaine had handled records. Elaine had been named in the ledger. Celeste had grown up on a different story. In her house, Clara Bellamy was not a woman buried under the wrong name. She was the scandal that cost the Rourkes their place beside Mercer. In Celeste's version, my silence had not protected her family. It had failed to protect their money. The old crime was not separate from the new one. It was the root. The judge denied the transfer, froze all burial and medical authority changes, ordered investigation into Mercer Memorial Group, referred the doctor and associated attorneys for review. Russell lost any authority over my medical, burial, or estate decisions. Celeste did not cry. She adjusted her sleeve. She did not look broken. She looked inconvenienced. That frightened me more, because people like that do not believe they have done wrong. They believe the room has become unfair. When we stepped into the hallway, Celeste did not look at Russell. She looked at June, not angry, not sorry, measuring. Like even then, she was deciding what could still be used. June took one step closer to me. I did not touch her shoulder. I wanted to, but I let her choose the distance. That mattered too. Mercer did not collapse all at once. Rot never does. The first lawsuit came from an 81-year-old widow whose husband's plot had been transferred without her understanding the form. Then a retired teacher whose sister's ashes had been moved to storage. Then 3 siblings who had spent 6 years believing their mother had signed away a family plot when she no longer knew what year it was. By the time local news called it a pattern, Mercer was already eating itself. Graham Pike lost his license. I saw him once outside the courthouse, smoking with one shaking hand. He looked at me. I looked at his cigarette. "Those will kill you," I said. He laughed bitterly. "So will your lawyer? Mine works faster." He did not laugh after that. Russell lost his business slowly. First the credit line, then the lease, then the employees, then the website went dark. One morning, he stood outside the building. He had spent years pretending to own and watched a man remove the sign with his name on it. By evening, there was only a pale rectangle on the brick where he used to believe he mattered. I did not go watch. Ruth sent the notice. I folded it twice, then unfolded it because my hands would not settle. In the end, I put it in the drawer with Marion's old tax receipts. That seemed as good a place as any for a son's collapse. 2 months later, Russell asked to see me. I refused twice. The third time, June asked me to let him come. Not because I forgive him, she said. Then why? I want to see if he lies when he has nothing left to gain. That child scared me sometimes. In the best way. Russell came on a rainy Thursday. No suit, no wife. No excuses ready enough to survive the room. We sat at the kitchen table. He looked thinner. Failure had taken the polish off him. Sometimes that is the beginning of a man. Sometimes it is only the beginning of self-pity. I don't know how to fix selling my own mother's grave, he said. You don't fix it. He looked up. You spend the rest of your life proving you know what you did. His eyes filled. June hates me. No, she distrusts you. Don't flatter yourself by calling every consequence hate. He nodded. I was angry at you. I know. You always had something left. Mom's memory, the cemetery. Your work. Even when you were old, you still had weight. That was honest. Ugly, but honest. And I hated feeling like you were measuring me against stone. I looked toward the window. Marion's old basil pots were gone, but faint rings still marked the sill. I helped make you weak, I said. He frowned. What? I rescued you too often. Paid debts. Covered failures. Called it love, because it was easier than watching you suffer. He cried then. So did I, though less obviously. Old men cry inward. It is not healthier, just quieter. I'm sorry, he said. This time the words had weight. Not enough to rebuild anything, but enough to mark the ground. I believed he was sorry. I did not yet believe he was different. I believe you, I said. His face softened. But you are not returning to my accounts. You are not making decisions for my body, my burial, or my estate. You will not inherit this house. You will not control where I rest. And June will see you on her terms. He closed his eyes. I understand. No, I said. You are beginning to. I showed him the revised documents. The grave beside Marion was mine again. But after I died, Willow Creek would not be just our resting place. With Ruth's help, I created the Marion Harlan Burial Rights Fund to help elderly people and families fight burial plot, fraud, cemetery transfers, and quiet theft disguised as planning. Russell read the papers. You're giving money to strangers? No, I said. I'm paying a debt to the dead. June did not forgive him that day. She did agree to visit Marion's grave with us one Sunday. Russell stood several feet back. June placed Marion's ring in the small memorial box inside the stone base. Then she set the silver comb beside it. Grandma shouldn't have had to wait in a place people could sell, she said. Nobody answered. There was no answer good enough. The fake headstone was not destroyed. I kept it. Not at the grave. I am sentimental, not deranged. I had the false death date ground away. The stonecutter asked if I wanted the right date left blank. I told him I was in no hurry. Under my name, I had him carve one small line, reserved, not available for family planning. June laughed when she saw it, a real laugh, the first one in weeks. That felt better than victory. Celeste wrote me one letter before sentencing. 4 pages, 2 fonts, not one honest sentence. I have seen grocery coupons with more moral courage. She wrote that she had only tried to protect the family. She wrote that grief had made me selfish. She wrote that June would understand one day. I burned it in the kitchen sink. June watched. Is that legal? She asked. At my age, sweetheart, I ration my crimes carefully. She smiled. Life, being rude and stubborn, continued. Russell still comes by sometimes. He cleans gutters, fixes the back step, brings groceries I did not ask for. He does not call it helping. I do not call it forgiveness. We are both learning the value of accurate language. Some mornings, I still set out 2 mugs, mine and Marion's. 5 years dead, and my hand still reaches for hers. There is no dignity in grief, only habit. Last Thursday, I went back to Willow Creek. I brought the rag, the brush, the thermos. June came with me. The red stake was gone. The sticker was gone. The sycamore moved a little in the wind, dropping small leaves onto Marion's name. I brushed them away. Then I brushed the empty space beside her, habit, I suppose. Or practice. Not for dying, for staying. I almost left a note under the stone that morning. I had written it 3 times at the kitchen table. The first version sounded like a speech. The second sounded like a lawsuit. The third looked like a grocery list, written during a small earthquake. So I left no note. I just sat there until June said the coffee was cold. I drank it anyway. Marion would have hated that. So I looked at her name and said, "Complain later." "I'm not done yet." June laughed softly. The sycamore moved above us. I had not won my peace back. I had only stopped them from selling it. My son tried to sell the place where I was supposed to rest, so I made sure it became the place where other old people learned they still had rights. And when I looked at that empty space beside Marion, I did not feel ready. But I was still there, still breathing, still annoying the dead. And for that morning, that was enough.